My mother-in-law humiliated me and tried to destroy my marriage at our 15th anniversary, so I revealed her greedy secret and took away her luxury life. I began seeing my now husband, Dave, 4 years ago because we worked at the same company. He had just joined the company while I worked as a manager since I had started well before him. Our company had strict policies against coworkers dating each other, but we both felt the attraction between us. Once we started to go out officially, we disclosed our relationship to HR. Surprisingly, our company was fine with it as long as we disclosed a relationship and maintained strict professionalism at work. Back then, Dave still lived with his parents and they shared a tight-knit relationship. Throughout our dating period, his mom, Catherine, was exceptionally kind and respectful to me. She treated me almost like her own daughter, showering me with thoughtful gifts and always giving me privacy by knocking on the door before entering his room when I was there. I genuinely believed we were going to have a wonderful mother-in-law and daughter-in-law relationship, especially since she expressed a desire for that as well. Dave had told me very early on about his relationship with Nancy, who he used to date before me. Apparently, things didn't work between them and they had ended up as just friends. In the beginning, when I met Nancy, I was a bit cold but civil towards her since I found it weird that she and Dave had dated and were now friends with each other. Dave did have other friends who he would text occasionally, but when it came to Nancy, he would meet her often. Nancy was sweet to me and would include me in their activities, whether it was movie nights at her house or trips to the zoo. This is how I started to see for myself and understand that she never had any feelings for him, and I warmed up to her. While I appreciated Nancy's efforts to include me in activities, I couldn't shake off the feeling that Dave's interaction with her was different. His demeanor changed when he was around her. He would crack silly jokes to make her laugh, listen to her with unusual intensity, and always seemed genuinely excited to see her. He would tell me to color my hair like Nancy or wear clothes like her, which wasn't really my style. I had blonde hair which he would insist that I color brown just like Nancy and tell me how it would suit me more. He would also constantly bring up Nancy's achievements in our conversations, even if we were having a regular date night. It would bother me definitely, but I was still in the initial days of my relationship with him at this point, so I thought I was reading too much into it. One thing I did find odd was that Dave's mom, Catherine, was also obsessed with Nancy. Like Dave, she would tell me how Nancy was actually the daughter of one of her former classmates, who she had known all her life, and that is how Nancy and Dave had become friends. She would tell me how she had always wanted Dave to end up with Nancy, but unfortunately they had not worked out. The way she talked about Nancy made me feel like I was just a consolation prize for her son. One night Dave had invited Nancy to join us for a game night. Initially, I thought it was just me and him, but later he informed me that he had invited Nancy also. Thankfully, Nancy texted him and canceled, saying that she had a date that night. This made Dave really upset and he started to drink, telling me how he hoped Nancy was not wasting time with a doofus and how no one was good enough for her. I was also drinking at this point, and without thinking, I straight up asked him if he still had feelings for Nancy. Dave tried to deny it, but I kept teasing him and asked if Nancy would not have broken up with him, would he still be with her? He admitted to it. He told me how he had always been in love with her, but she had rejected him multiple times and how their mothers had forced them both to go on dates so they could eventually end up together. He told me that Nancy dated him for a few months but then broke up, telling him how she never had feelings for him. They decided to stay good friends after that. I asked him if he was still in love with her, but he got very quiet at this point. I guess I got my answer because I decided I did not want any part of this. He clearly seemed to be in love with his best friend, so I got ready to leave. Dave must have realized his mistake and started to beg me for forgiveness. He told me how I tricked him into admitting all this and that he was too drunk to make sense of what he was saying. I did not care and I called an Uber to go back home. I cried myself to sleep that night since I really thought he and I could have a future together. In the morning, I woke up to multiple missed calls from Dave and Nancy. Dave had sent me texts apologizing and assuring me that he loved me and asking me why I had not come to work that day, while Nancy had texted me telling me that Dave had told her everything and that she wanted to talk to me. I decided to email a leave of absence to my company citing medical reasons since I was genuinely not feeling well after the terrible night I had. I decided to meet up with Nancy later that evening so we could talk. When we met, Nancy told me very clearly that she had absolutely no feelings for Dave whatsoever. She explained to me how pushy both their mothers had been and how she was so unhappy when she dated Dave. She told me that Dave might still be confused about what he wanted, and if I wasn't comfortable having her around, she was ready to cut him out of her life. I guess talking to her made me feel reassured and understand the situation much better. She told me that what I was feeling was completely justified and encouraged me to talk to Dave, telling me how I needed to hear him out at least. In the end, she assured me that she would support my decision to either leave Dave or forgive him. To be honest, I did not expect her to be so kind and understanding. Later, after a few days of taking some space from Dave, where I would see him at work but ignore him, and he understood that I needed some time. I decided to give him a chance to explain himself. He came over my place so we could talk. I sat him down and listened as he poured out his feelings, admitting to the confusion and mistakes he had made. He explained how his history with Nancy had been complicated and apologized for what he had told me that night. He told me how he had been thinking about everything for the past few days and realized just how much he loved me and how his feelings with Nancy were only in the past. He went on expressing remorse for comparing me to her and trying to mold me into someone I wasn't. Dave emphasized how much he loved me and he was willing to work on our relationship if I still wanted him. His sincere words broke down the guard I had put up. It wasn't an easy decision, but I chose to give him another chance. I told him that he needed to stay away from Nancy and that if we ever met her, it was going to be a group thing. Dave understood the gravity of the situation and agreed to this arrangement. We did talk to Nancy regarding this and she was okay with it. She understood that we were taking the step for our future and assured us that she would not interfere. In the weeks and months that followed, Dave and I really put in the effort to rebuild trust and strengthen our relationship. We made it a point to keep communication honest and open, dealing with any lingering insecurities or worries that popped up. I won't lie, it wasn't a walk in the park. It demanded patience and commitment from both of us, but bit by bit, as we faced the challenges head on, we could feel ourselves becoming a more solid couple. Dave genuinely worked on changing his behavior and letting go of the emotional baggage from the past. Our work was going well and we got into doing things together that brought us even closer, creating fresh memories and shared experiences that were uniquely ours. Throughout all this, my mother-in-law started to display some weird behavior. First of all, when she found out that Dave and Nancy were no longer friends, she yelled at him and told him how he could not just cut off his oldest friend and how Nancy's mother was not going to like Dave after that. Even though she did not know everything that had happened between the three of us, she did piece a few things together because over time she started to blame me for coming into Dave's life. Once she realized that we were getting serious with each other, of course she was never outright rude, but she would make sly comments to Dave during dinner, like how he should not settle down fast or about how he could do much better. When this would bother me or rub me the wrong way, she would try to joke it off and tell me to lighten up. But, things took a turn when Dave popped the question about a year ago. The first time I saw my mother-in-law after the engagement was at their big Thanksgiving bash. My then fiancé, who was just beaming with excitement, couldn't stop showering me with compliments about my outfit. He even turned to his mom and said, "Don't you think her outfit is so cute today?" And his mom goes, "She could have dressed better." Talk about a buzzkill. My mother-in-law started throwing around really rude comments like fat cow and piggy, just adding a dose of unnecessary negativity whenever I went to meet her with Dave. I'm on the skinny side for the record. When I talked to Dave about it, initially he brushed it off, thinking it was just a joke, but as these comments became more frequent and personal, he started to see the real issue as well. He would immediately call her out when she crossed the line, which would then lead to a whole fight between them with my mother-in-law telling him that he was being overly sensitive or that he had changed and couldn't take a joke anymore. I could never figure out what was driving her to act this way towards me. One day, out of the blue, when we were discussing our wedding plans and I looked at Dave and teased him about how he was all mine after marriage, she laughed and dropped the comment, "He's mine until marriage," which totally caught me and Dave off guard. I got a bit uncomfortable hearing that and Dave was quick to tell her how weird and inappropriate that was. She always used to be on my case, constantly asking about my work schedule and then dropping not so subtle hints to Dave like, "Let's meet up when she's at work, or we can do this when she's not around." It felt like she was having a weird power struggle with me and wanted to push me out of her son's life. Whenever we were out somewhere, she had this habit of positioning herself right in the middle of Dave and me. I swear she even cut me off mid-stride just to be next to him. And don't even get me started on how she reacted when we shared a little kiss. We kept it classy, of course, but she acted like it was the end of the world and would tell me that I should not do all these things publicly. Oh, and the personal space invasion was unreal. She would put her hands all over Dave and she just had to stick her nose into every decision and plan we made. Without fail, every Friday when she was at work, she would text to find out our plans as if she was somehow involved in our relationship. Whenever I used to talk about something related to my Dave, she always had to say, "No, I know him the best," and butt herself into every conversation we had, competing for his attention. If Dave and I were just messing around, like tickling each other, she would come up and say, "Stop touching him," and tell him how she missed him as a child when she could just keep him to herself. She had no boundaries and I couldn't stand it. When we finally tied the knot, she gave a speech about herself during our wedding ceremony about how she had sacrificed so much to have a son and raise him to be a gentleman. We had also invited Nancy to our wedding, and it was pleasant to see her after such a long time. She had come with her boyfriend and congratulated us on our wedding. My mother-in-law then insisted that my husband and Nancy should take a picture together for old time's sake and told everyone high and near about how she had always wanted Nancy as her daughter-in-law. It was honestly so embarrassing, and in the end, my father-in-law had to escort a drunk mother-in-law out of our venue when she would not shut up. Later, when we went on our honeymoon, my husband asked his mother to only contact us for emergencies, and he assured her that we would respond to her texts when we could. Well, that simple request triggered a whole spiral, and she went to the entire family crying and claiming my husband broke her heart and that he no longer cared about his poor old mother now that he's married. When I was about 2 weeks away from delivering my first baby, my mother-in-law texted my husband inquiring about the birthing plan. He informed her that it would be just me, him, and my mom in the birthing room. We planned to text her once our baby boy was born so she could come meet him. Well, that simple explanation set off a storm. She threw a fit, accusing my husband of pushing her away and claiming we prioritize my family over his, which couldn't be further from the truth. In reality, we see his family more than we see mine, so I have no clue where she got that idea. To make matters more confusing, she called my husband and said, "I have to get used to the fact that I have to share you now with not only a wife but also a child." I had a gut feeling that it was all about jealousy. This wasn't the first time she'd shown signs of it. She had also made a rude remark to my mom at my baby shower, which we had a few weeks earlier. She told everyone about how well she had raised my husband and how this is why she should be my baby's favorite grandma instead of my mother. Maybe it was meant to be a joke, but my mom was a bit hurt by the comment. When my husband told her over the phone that it would just be me, him, and my mom in the delivery room, she responded with, "Well, that's not how your wife should treat me. She should be a better daughter-in-law." I had my mother-in-law in the room with me when I gave birth. My husband stood his ground, telling her, "Well, that was your birth story. This is hers. I support her decision." A few months back, she informed me that she wanted to be called Nana, leaving the title of Grandma for my mom. It felt like she was still angling to be the favorite grandma, but what she didn't realize was that it was pushing me further away. Her controlling and manipulative tendencies made it hard for me to be around her. Throughout my entire pregnancy, she never asked how I felt. Every time she saw me, it was the same routine: "How's the baby boy doing?" And each time, I wanted to respond with a cheeky, "I don't know, why don't you ask him yourself?" Whenever I brought up my pregnancy, she had this uncanny ability to turn the conversation around and make it all about herself. Every time I shared something, she jumped into talking about her own birth story and how she felt during her pregnancy, completely sidestepping any interest in my experiences. I even mentioned a few times that I planned to get an epidural, and she responded with, "I did it all natural. I don't trust those things." When I finally gave birth to our son, my mother-in-law started going over the top. She would constantly tell me how I should feed the baby, how I should hold him, how I should change his diaper, how we should bathe the baby, and it was exhausting. She even wanted to move in with us, telling me and Dave about how she could take over all the motherly duties, but I put my foot down and told her that this was my baby. I don't know if it was my pregnancy hormones, but I did not want our baby to be around her. She was extremely controlling, and I told her that she was not welcome to come over to our place uninvited. This did not sit well with her. My husband tried to calm her down, telling her how this was a crucial time for our baby and we needed our own privacy. In the end, I honestly did not care what she felt since I was too busy taking care of our son. When our son was 4 years old, Dave was offered a better paying job that would allow us to move away from my mother-in-law, and we immediately seized on the opportunity. Even though I would have to look for another job and probably get paid less, I did not care, and I asked Dave to accept the offer. My mother-in-law obviously did not like that, and even my father-in-law tried to convince Dave not to take up the job, but thankfully my husband did not listen to them and we eventually moved away from them. It turned out that once I was away from them, I felt much lighter and happier. Fortunately, we were also living close to my grandparents, which was great for me because I've always loved spending time with them. Whenever Dave was at work, I would take our son to meet my grandparents regularly. This was during the time when I was applying for new jobs and interviewing with different companies. My grandma absolutely adored my son and my husband. She would make strawberry tarts for my husband, which was his favorite, and he would rave about how delicious it was. Word slowly got around to my mother-in-law, who absolutely hated the fact that my husband was getting so close to my grandparents. She would get all snippy and almost upset whenever my husband brought up my grandparents. If Dave and I were busy because of a family dinner at Grandma's and he could not pick up her calls, there would be a sarcastic comment about not wanting to upset Grandma. She would even get snippy about my grandma making those precious strawberry tarts, but Dave would ask her to back off. One day, while I was still looking for a new job, I found an opening in Dave's company. I discussed it with him and it was at a much higher position in his company, so he would not be directly working under me. Honestly, We both thought that I might not even get it, but as luck would have it, after several rounds of interviews, I secured the position. I was shocked to say the least since I would be earning even more than I did in my last job as a manager. Without a thought, I accepted the job. I thought Dave would be happy as well, but it turns out he never thought I would actually get it and was pissed that I accepted it without discussing it with him. He urged me not to take up the job and told me that I could become a stay-home mother. I argued back that I didn't like sitting at home and tried to make him see how it was good for both of us to be earning. Over the years, my husband has told me several times about how I could leave my job if I wanted to since he was also earning quite well by that point, but I liked waking up in the morning with a sense of purpose and earning my own bucks. Both Dave and I had our own personal accounts and then we had a shared bank account, which we used to pay for bills or child care. He would also send regular checks of hundreds of dollars to his mother, which was a bit odd, but I kept my mouth shut about it since he was free to do whatever he wanted with his money. Eventually, I started to notice how my mother-in-law and father-in-law would go on a cruise every 3 months where she would wear and flaunt new jewelry on her social media, which made me realize slowly that she was using her son's checks for all these expenses. Last weekend, we had our 15th wedding anniversary celebration and because it was a huge achievement, we decided to go all out with the guest list and even hire caterers. Everyone, including my parents, Dave's parents, our close friends, and some of our co-workers were invited to the party. When my mother-in-law came, she ignored me as usual and went straight up to hug Dave and asked, "Son?" As if I wasn't standing right next to them, I smiled at her politely and walked away to mingle with other guests. Everyone seemed to be having a good time and we sat down to have dinner. Amidst the clinking of glasses and cheerful chatter, my mother-in-law stood up, her voice cutting through the jovial atmosphere. "I can't believe that my dear son has been married now for the past 15 years, she announced, her words causing a hush to fall over the room. "It feels just like yesterday that I was teaching him ABCs or showing him how to ride a bicycle." My husband blushed hearing her words as everyone laughed. She continued, "I can't believe that I have such an adorable grandson who is slowly growing up to be a gentleman like his father." She then spoke more about herself and Dave, but not even once did she mention me even though it was our wedding anniversary. I let it slide because this was typical of her. I guess my parents must have felt my frustration because my dad then gave a toast about how proud he was of my achievements and how I continued to be a strong, independent woman and how my son is going to have great examples of both parents. Teary-eyed, I took a sip of my drink feeling grateful, but my mother-in-law started to laugh and say, "What's so great about her? Every other woman has a job anyway." I was shocked to hear that since my dad had just said something nice, just like she had said something nice about her son. My mother came to my defense immediately and reminded my mother-in-law that even though it's true that every other woman has a job, not every other woman earns as much as me. She joked about how I was earning 3 times my husband, which is rare to find in couples nowadays. My side of the family immediately agreed and raised their glasses in celebration. I could see that Dave was a bit uncomfortable, so I signaled to my mother to stop. I understood why my mother was coming to defend me, but I did not want us to stoop down to my mother-in-law's level. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law looked furious that my mother said something like that and loudly questioned my mother about it. Seizing the chance to defuse the situation, I told my mother-in-law that my mother was just joking and suggested we get back to our dinner for now. This is when my mother-in-law's eyes narrowed, which she did only when she was super pissed. She got up from the chair and took a whole gulp of her drink before loudly saying, "Who do you think you are? My son only married you because you could help him climb the career ladder. He has always been in love with his childhood best friend, Nancy, who would have been perfect for him. I don't know, but you came into his life and destroyed everything. You're just a nobody he got married to and you should count yourself as lucky that you got a son like mine." Shock rippled through the guests as I felt a surge of anger and betrayal hearing her venomous words. My father-in-law tried to calm her and make her sit back down in her seat, but she refused and went on to say how I needed to be taught a lesson. Dave was frozen in his seat. I asked my mother to escort our son and other kids out since I didn't want them to witness me destroying my mother-in-law. I could feel everybody's eyes on me. I plastered a smile on my face and looked straight at my mother-in-law, thanking her, knowing that this was the moment I had been waiting for. I told her that if this was truly the case and if Dave was truly in love with Nancy after all these years, then he was about to get the biggest shock of his life. I went on, letting her know that not only could I fire her son given my higher position at work or make his life difficult at work, but I could also divorce him and take him for everything he had since we shared a son now. Her expression shifted from disbelief to realization, and I told her she had no clue about the extent of my influence over her son's life. It was a moment of asserting my strength and telling her to recognize her place because she had no idea what I was capable of. I went on to tell her that once her son loses his job, he would not be able to send her monthly checks, which I knew she was cashing in to buy new jewelry or book an expensive vacation for herself. My mother-in-law's face turned red in embarrassment. Dave tried to intervene, but I wasn't having it. I asked him if what his mother had told the entire room was true about him still being in love with Nancy, and he vehemently denied it, assuring me that I already knew how much he loved me and that I should not allow his mother's words to affect me. I expressed my frustration with his mom's constant power struggle and made it clear that if he couldn't stand up to her, I was more than willing to walk away from the marriage. The room hung in a tense silence as I laid down my ultimatum. I then asked my father-in-law to escort my mother-in-law out of our house. She started to scream at me about how I had no right to do this, but Dave interjected and asked her to just leave since he had heard enough from her already. This reduced my mother-in-law to tears and she started shouting and cursing at me for trying to come between her and Dave. My father-in-law tried his best to escort her away quietly. We tried to continue the celebrations, but everyone was really shaken up about what had happened. Since the party, Dave and I have not spoken to each other properly. He understands why I said all those things, but he thinks I went a bit too far. I can't bear to look at him, so we are sleeping in different rooms. I guess he might be right and I might have gone overboard with his mother, but I have gone through this torture for the past 15 years. I think I just could not take it anymore and snapped at the party. Some of the relatives from Dave's side have reached out to me telling me how I should not have spoken to his mother that way, but they have no idea what I have put up with for all these years. So, Reddit, Ida for kicking my mother-in-law out after she embarrassed me at our wedding anniversary? Wow, I did not expect so many responses to my post. I have decided to listen to you all and have a heart-to-heart conversation with my husband about everything. I don't know if what his mother said was true or not, but I need to talk to him. So, we talked. We had a lengthy conversation during which Dave acknowledged that his mother's behavior had indeed crossed some serious boundaries. He expressed his frustration with her actions over the years, admitting that my response, though unexpected, stemmed from pent-up frustration. He also clarified that he had never spoken to Nancy over the years or even mentioned her to his mom, so he was shocked as well that she mentioned her after all this time. I firmly told him that I was tired of watching his mother be obsessed with his ex and questioned him if he would have liked it had my parents done the same to him and compared him to my exes. Dave understood where I was coming from and profusely apologized. However, he felt torn between his loyalty to me and the deep bond he had with his mother. He shared that he confronted her about the incident, but she remained unapologetic and believes I should be the one to apologize to her. I decided to suggest that we seek couples therapy. It felt like it was much needed for us at this point, and despite initial reluctance, Dave agreed and we have decided to go for a session this coming week. As per all the comments from people who wanted me to ask Dave to block his mom permanently, I feel like this is something that I will bring up during our counseling therapy so we can discuss and make a decision regarding this with the help of our counselor. It's not easy for someone like Dave to just cut off his mom despite how toxic she is, so we will handle this issue slowly. To everyone wondering, Dave and I are very much married. I got a lot of DMs from people asking me to check Dave's phone since they seem to think that he might be secretly talking to her. Instead of violating my husband's trust, I decided to reach out to Nancy herself. It had been years since we had talked and we caught up on everything. She was shocked that my mother-in-law had brought her up during our wedding anniversary and told me a similar story about how her mother was not happy with her husband, Michael, ever since she got married. I guess my mother-in-law and Nancy's mom have been so obsessed over the idea that their kids would end up together that they refused to get over it. Nancy showed me pictures of her adorable twin daughters and assured me that she was very happy in her marriage with Michael. She hasn't been in contact with Dave for a long time, which is exactly what my husband told me. We promised to stay in touch more often and I plan on letting our kids meet up for a play date soon. Anyway, Dave and I have been doing quite well since we started going to counseling. We are able to communicate with each other better and are slowly starting to get back to our old selves. Dave did end up blocking my mother-in-law eventually when she continued to interfere in our lives, but he does talk to my father-in-law once in a while. My father-in-law has assured us that he would not allow my mother-in-law anywhere near us and has kept his word. Our son is doing well in school. Dave and I spend our major holidays with my parents or my grandparents and overall things are looking well for us.